Withology is about the stories behind success. Join host Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications, as he interviews successful industry leaders to hear the fascinating stories about their personal journeys and the people who have helped them get to where they are today.
Hello, and welcome to Withology. I'm Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications, and I'm really looking forward to my conversations with today's guest, Sherry Phillips. Sherry is the new CEO of Forbes Global Media and happens to be the first woman CEO in the company's 107-year history. She's held various roles during her almost 30 years at this iconic media leader. She's born and raised in the Philadelphia area and still lives outside of the city with her family, and is very fortunate that it's just a short train ride to New York City, where she is an awful lot of the time every week. I got to know Sherry early on in her career in the advertising business, and we've worked together in many ways over the years. And Sherry, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Withology.
Always happy to be and spend time with Brian. You're such a legend in the Philadelphia area, so it's my honor.
Well, thank you very much. Sherry, let's start at the beginning. Who was your biggest mentor growing up? This is called Withology, and it's all about our successes because we're with other people who help us along. Tell me a little bit about who was your biggest mentor growing up. Was there someone who particularly shaped your worldview or your career aspirations? And are there any specific pieces of advice that you still carry with you to this day?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been so fortunate to have so many great mentors, both male and female, including you, Brian. And I've had so many people help along the way, even very early in my career, kind of in the middle of my career, sometimes when I was struggling to get my footing and figure out my next move. Even to this day, every day, I'm still getting advice. And I think a big piece of that is making sure that you're open for it and that you're hearing it, even when you're so pressed and busy as we all are these days. Even if you don't realize you're getting advice, sometimes it's when you put your head on the pillow and you're like, oh, someone said that today and it really resonated with me at a time when I could reflect and take it in. But yes, I grew up in Delaware County and I went to Strathaven High School and I had some really incredible teachers there. I then went to University of Michigan and I had a couple incredible professors there that really pushed me, made me feel more confident and comfortable in the avenues that I wanted to pursue, which of course, at 18, who really knows what they want to do? At least I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I loved communications. I loved speaking. I loved talking to people. I loved the idea of business and entrepreneurship. So it's amazing that I ended up where I am at Forbes. A lot of it I do think was luck. And, some of it was luck that I was preparing for all along. But yeah, lots of mentors. And then, including my family. I'm lucky that my parents are both still with us today. I have just an incredible support system, both from my family. My husband, who is also local from the area, is a career prosecutor. And then we have 4 children. So this kind of incredible journey to raise your family here where you grew up, which is one of the reasons why we decided to stay, aside from the fact that my husband had to live here for his job. But it's been really meaningful for us to raise our family with extended family where we're from. So it's a special area, as you know, Brian.
Oh, yeah. And it's an hour train ride to New York City, too, when you need to get up there, too, which is so nice. It's kind of almost a suburb at times, it seems like.
It is.
Yeah. If you look back, what are some of the pivotal moments or key decisions that led you down this career path that you have, which is so amazing?
Yeah, thank you. I think sometimes it was just people prodding me. And I would say no to something at first because either I didn't have the confidence or the belief that I should be doing this or that I should be at that next level. And people are like, are you crazy? You're already at that level or you're already doing that job. Or no, you got to go for it. It was people believing in me before I believed in myself. And I've been fortunate enough to have many of those kinds of cheerleaders or champions in my career, whether it was personal or professional or just friends along the way. And as I mentioned, I do have 4 children. And in those moments of being a working mom, I think there were those moments where I doubted myself of, no, I have to stay home. And it was all of my friends who actually were staying at home that were like, no, you got to get out there. You got to do this for us. You're our one, get out there, make it happen. And we'll pick up your kids or they'll be fine. So I think a lot of people have that myth that it's, the working moms don't support working women or non-working women. And I think it's We're all working. It doesn't matter what you do. We're all just trying to do our best out there. But I had a really good support staff just from our schools and my local community here.
It's something about the way that your success and your personality and your drive and your smile too, that I think you just rally people to like, yeah, I want to be part of that. Let me do this for you, Sherry, because you've done so much for other people well. So I have to say that that's a big part of how you come across and how people know you too. So we're talking too about a little bit about the critical role of at times when you're down, getting yourself back up and hard work. I read somewhere opportunity comes into many people's lives or everyone's life. It's just wearing overalls sometimes. Recognize it when it comes in. If you could sit down with your younger self over a cup of coffee now, what advice would you give?
I do that quite a bit because I have 3 daughters. One, is 26. She works in New York. So although advice is a funny thing, sometimes your children don't always take it from you. They
Oh,
take it
yeah.
from others. But a lot of it is cliche, and it's cliche for a reason, which is trust your gut. And if you feel like something is off, it probably isn't. And if it isn't off, it's just off for you. And so that timing and that moment just may not be aligned. And I think a lot of it is just being honest with yourself of, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do more. There's times in my life where, and I had some great mentors that said, if you want this, it will require more. And I knew to some degree what that meant. It would mean more time for me when I felt like I was already at my max and that maybe I didn't have more to give in that moment. And so whether I had to wait a year or wait for the next opportunity, or sometimes it was the market or was the particular job in and of itself, the role. But there are moments where you will be required to do more. And if you want that and to take that leap, then I think you have to be really honest with yourself that do you have that in you? And do you have that? Some of it is just time, Brian. Like that's the one thing we're all up against, right?
Yeah, particularly now it seems like, but all over life too. And you have to have those moments where you've had them, and I certainly have had them, where you feel like I could feel it, and you think, well, you know what? Let's get it going. We got to get going. I don't know. Yeah,
And what's the
start.
worst that could happen, right?
Right. It's right. We don't succeed. That's fine. They'll pivot. We'll figure it out another way too. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The heart of Withology is acknowledging the individuals who are with us, with you, those who helped uplift you to become the successful person that you are today, that others are as well. How do you foster culture at Forbes where people feel that they're with a mission rather than working for a company? Because that seems to be something that really comes through at Forbes too, that sense of we're at this unique, wonderful place that's having an impact on a global basis.
Gosh, I hope that is permeated down. And, for me, I was lucky enough when I started in 1996, I was working directly for the Forbes family, and the heritage is really rich. And, it's a 107-year-old iconic brand, really built on family legacy and history. And everyone in the family was involved in some way. And of the brothers, they each had a piece of the business and had a unique perspective on it, had a unique role, but they all had like a piece of Malcolm. And so you felt that almost like that personality was alive. And I still feel that way, that he is still very much a part of the business. And so when we talk about that brand, it does have the global awareness. You can go anywhere in the world and people know what Forbes is. And then it stands for success, it stands for entrepreneurship, and it stands for something that we all aspire to. So is to have that success. And so I feel really proud of that. But our culture is embedded in that history, which I love. And so I feel I take that very seriously, that I carry that forward, and that hopefully I carry that forward, that, the brand is alive in another 100 years, alive and thriving, but that people still know that history and what it stands for and what BC Forbes founded, the mission of Forbes. And really, at the end of the day, yes, and he has this great quote that business is not to accumulate millions, it's to accumulate happiness. And I think that that's an important part for all of us, right? Like we hit these moments in our career where it's challenging or where it's hard. But at the end of the day, we're so blessed that either you come home to a family or a loved one or a pet or just something that takes you outside of what you're doing day to day.
Well, that's what I love about Forbes too, and why I'm such an avid reader and engage with it, because it's not just reporting things. You're about this reporting what's going on, but at the same time, reminding people about the opportunities and driving systemic change in business, culture, society for the better too as well. So here's what's happening, but here's how it goes forward in a better way.
Yeah. And I think for us, it's Listen, at Forbes, we always celebrate the people behind business, right? It's not necessarily a company point of view. It's also that aspirational, like, yes, we know Elon Musk is a billionaire and anyone can look that up. But what if it's someone who's working class that came from Delaware County and ended up becoming, really successful? How do we learn how that person did that? How is that aspirational? How can it relate to me? And I think that's something at Forbes that we pride ourselves on, whether it's a CEO or whether it's a young entrepreneur or like Forbes under 30, whether it's a woman over 50 who's starting a new business. So I think there's access points and entry points that we want success to be relatable.
Yeah. And I think more and more there's an appreciation. You and I are both from this place called Delco, Delaware County. And there's times there's the gritty part of it, and then there's the quote mainline part of it. And you can play both ends of the keyboard. And I know you can as well, too. Which part do you want, kind of thing. What are some of the practices or habits that help you stay grounded and connected with yourself and with the others amid the pace of work and 350 or whatever emails and texts and calls and this and that? How do you stay connected with yourself and with others in that?
Listen, there's no balance, right? I mean, everyone says that, you try to get it. It's hard. I'm a big believer in working out. I always have. I went to Strathaven, as I said. I played sports there because that was a big part of the high school. You kind of had to do it. And I actually had a great basketball coach there. I wasn't great at basketball, the team was, but he was a great mentor, John Smith. And, just sports is something that I do think, whether you're good at that particular one or not, being part of a team is really important. And so for me, I've always had that kind of team spirit, but also it did help me, kind of have this love of being active and getting outside. And even on a busy day last night, I got home off the train and I was like, I got to go walk the dog because I just need some fresh air and a moment to collect my thoughts while I was calling my parents. And then checking in on my kids who I had dropped off to college. And a lot of it is just communication, but also knowing when to take care of yourself and put your safety mask on first, as they say.
I love that analogy too. It's such a great one. First, to save the others on the plane, first put your own mask on. What's been, not just now, but over your career, like some tough leadership challenges that you faced, and what did you learn from them? Not so much the problem, but what did you learn? And maybe we're touching on some of them already, but give me more on that one.
Yeah, there's been a lot of tough ones. What I learned is that in those tough moments, definitely wasn't alone. There was a bunch of us. We were all in that moment together. And it was how we helped one another out of that moment. And so, a lot of them are still my colleagues today, or they're just, friends of mine that have former colleagues that have gone on to other places. And we're still super close. And we're close because we went through the tough moment, not because we went through a record year and we were all had large bonuses and were living large. It was the hard moments where we really had to rely on one another and be resilient and trust one another. And that's really bonding.
That's kind of the theme of this whole thing. Like sometimes people think, oh, well, no, she or he, their success is the really successful people over the long haul understand that it's about with other people and, mentoring people and people that have kind of, years ago, I won't mention the CEO of a major corporation, now retired, who turned to me one time and said, you take a lot of notes. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I feel like I'm getting an MBA plus. And it was Joe Neubauer, who the CEO of Aramark and now a wonderful philanthropist and just a wonderful person. And I was in meetings with him when I was like 30 years old. I remember thinking, gosh, this guy is so smart. I'm learning so much. And those people, and they're still friends now, years and years later.
Yeah, it's the journey of it.
The first woman CEO in Forbes' 107-year history. That's amazing.
Thank you.
What did that honor feel like when you first heard that they were going to do that? I mean, that must have felt like, not just because you're a woman, but just in general, I'm going to be the CEO of the whole thing. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah. It was exhilarating. It came through kind of quickly. So a lot of people weren't surprised, including my parents. They were very proud and they still are. So that's lovely to see. But as are my children and my husband, I think for me, it's again, the waters are turbulent out there in our industry. So how do I pay homage to what I've helped build over the past 30 years? I've been a good chunk of the 100-year history, but how do I make sure that that survives for the next leaders, hopefully future female leaders at Forbes, and also for media in general? And I do feel like we're in this time with media where publishers are really banding together. Brian, you and I have lots of talks about that, whether it's Pointer or News Media Alliance. where the publishers are coming together and really helping one another. And I feel really proud of that moment in the industry because it's not easy. And the only way we're going to survive what's happening is kind of long game is by banding together and learning from one another.
Yeah, when I became publisher of the Philadelphia Inquirer, to go to the first time to the Poynter Institute, and you're there and you're like, wow, there's Arthur Sulzberger, New York Times, there's this person. And yet in here in the other room, they're just people. And they're all like, hey, that's a good idea. How about this? That you realize that it was such a collegial environment.
Yeah, I remember you being on the phone at the Inquirer and being like, oh, I got to take a call with Sam Zell. Or I was like, wow, that's so cool. But yeah, I mean, it was a moment where people wanted to help you. You know, you were the new guy. They were rooting for you. And I think we can't lose sight of the fact that entrepreneurs, we want other entrepreneurs and businesses to thrive because then we all do.
Yeah, having our outsider's perspective, and then occasionally, and also being on the inside. That when you mentioned the News Media Alliance, it used to be called the Newspaper Association of America. And when we started this company, Brian Communications, they were a client. And one of the things we recommended is, since there's so many digital companies as part of this, maybe Newspaper Association of America made sense 80 years ago, but how about News Media Alliance? So that's how the name came about too. When you look back, talk about some pivotal moments in your career that you decided to go this versus this, and you kind of look back and you think that was a great moment.
Yeah. I started at Travel and Leisure, and I loved working in Travel and Leisure. Someone from an agency recommended me to Forbes. One of my bosses and great mentor at the time, Bill Flatley, called me and I said, no, I'm not interested in business journalism. I want to stay in consumer journalism. And so I said no to the job 3 or 4 times. And then they kept offering more money. And so I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm 24 years old. I have to take this job. And I did. And I remember going down to our iconic building on Lower Fifth. And it is such a cool building. NYU owns it now. And I thought, how did I get here? Like, why am I working at Forbes? And I get it. We had a meeting in the boardroom and it was all these big oil paintings of the Forbes family and this big long table. I was like, why did I say yes to this job? It was one of those things where it's like, all right, this is kind of silly if I don't say yes. But oh my gosh, it was such an incredible honor starting there at that time in the late 90s. And Steve Forbes had just come off of running for president for the Republican candidate. His story was just so interesting and he was so authentic, sharing what it was like being on the campaign trail. Humbling is actually the word he would describe it as. And he's such a wonderful man. We're, very close and still talk almost every week. But so there was that piece of it. And then there was, the media part, which was fun and creative and clever. Back then it was really print only. And then we entertained all the time. And so the Forbes, we had the Forbes yacht, we had real estate properties all over the world where we took clients to. And there was a real art to entertaining. And we, called it very Forbesian, but the manners were impeccable. The research was, we had to research every client before they came on to anything, make sure that everyone around them knew all the details, that we didn't serve any of the competitors, liquor brands or have competitors on that same trip. So we took it really seriously and we had a lot of pride in that experience and wanting our customers to feel like they were part of the Forbes family. And so it was a really special moment in time back, in that day when we entertained like that. And I still take that pride forward and it's a little different now, but I think that sentiment remains the same.
Yeah, I mean, you touch the Forbes, all the various parts of Forbes, 140 million people a month on a global basis. That's amazing. And that's, both the media products and that's events and the localized editions, which you'll talk about here in a second. How many languages do you guys do?
We are in over 60 countries with 43 languages.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Digital is online as well as print. And then the events, activities. And, that's what's so powerful about Forbes too. It's more than just a publication or a website. It's this encompassing of an environment across the board. When you look to the future, what do you get particularly excited about? Like when you think about, okay, this is really neat. And then in a couple of years, I could see us kind of growing into this or whatever. What do you get excited about as you look at the future?
What I love about working at Forbes, and, Steve Forbes has said it in the past, that everyone who works at Forbes is an entrepreneur. We're the kind of people that we want to be on the cover We are gritty, whether it's, you have that Delco gritty kind of passion and hustle, or it's you can see yourself on the cover of Forbes, in whatever role you play. And so for me, the way we've iterated over the decades has been remarkable. And I've loved being a part of every one of those journeys, even when it's been really hard pivoting from print to digital. That was not easy, as we all remember in late 90s, 2000 was probably the mark of that. Internet started, I think it was 1994. So those changes have all been, some have been really hard, but they've been really exciting and learned so much along that journey. But for me, what's exciting is that I know we will evolve along with the industry and the changes. And in, around 2008, 2009, after the financial crisis, a lot of publishers were doing really bad. A lot of them closed shop. And we pivoted once again to launch Forbes Under 30, which launched in 2010, and then a branded content solution. And both of which were, Forbes Under 30 really helped rejuvenate the brand to a much younger demographic, which we needed. And then we also started really accelerating, where Forbes started accelerating in our Forbes women's space and creating all kinds of content and opportunities for women in business. So those were moments that I feel like, oh my God, that we really pivoted, and it was hard, but it really helped not only have the brand survive, but thrive when other, publishers were not. And so I do have that trust that we will figure out those pivots, and they're exciting. For us, Under 30 now, out like 14 years roughly. One of the pivots we made off of that, or an offshoot where we found that the community was really engaged, was around creators. And so 2 years ago, we launched the Forbes Creators List. And, some of the top tech companies that I won't mention say that they rely on our rankings for those lists of creators and those businesses. So Forbes has done a great job in the creator community. We have our Creator Upfronts event in October, sponsored by Walmart, which is kind of fun to have Walmart as a sponsor. So those unexpected places where we've pivoted, but it's also because the brand, we went into those spaces, we created those spaces, and then we had the permission with those audiences to expand. So, Under 30 leading us into some other places like creators, which is really exciting and dynamic and really kind of the epicenter of what's happening in marketing right now.
And it's amazing. And it goes back to the trust of the brand that you've been part of for 30 years now. And obviously goes back, and like we're saying, over 100 years. And it's just, it evolved. But yet in the end, whether it be Under 30 or it would be Forbes Women, there's an authenticity to how you guys approach this and the brand that I think makes it like, wow, yeah. And people under 30 are like, I want to be part of that. I want to read that.
Yeah.
I want to experience that too.
Yeah. And again, we've filled in some places where like, oh, that was a miss. That really wasn't right for our brand. And so I think, listen, every entrepreneur, you want to test and learn. But I think it's also right to acknowledge when, hey, that's not really our lane. That should be Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or someone else. So I think it's good to acknowledge where you have that permission from your audience and where they trust you. It's probably the most important aspect of business overall, right, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about AI, because we're talking about it in so many different environments. How does that work? But I also think as it relates to the concerns, the threats that some people see with AI, but at the same time, when you look at a company like Forbes, there's so much trust in the brand too, because I think you're going to see more and more concerns about, is this authentic? Is this real? Or however it kind of develops and morphs. But talk a little bit about AI and trust.
Yeah. I think with anything like this, there's fear, there's skepticism, and there's opportunity, right? So for us, trusted journalism is, our whole brand. It's everything that we do. So anything that we do that is infused with AI has to be human centric. And so the human trusted journalism needs to be at the center of it. And, there's a lot of people right now that are saying like, oh, we're ahead of the curve on this, or we're doing that. And I don't know if I see really anyone being a clear leader right now in AI, including ourselves. I will say that. And I think for us, we do wait, sometimes just a beat to make sure that it is going to be right for us and that our audiences will trust, that we'll bring them through that process of, hey, we're going to try this, trust us on it. But we did make an organizational change in July where we are looking at AI, not from a journalism perspective, but really how can we accelerate, one, some of the internal processes, which most companies are doing, and that makes sense for efficiencies. But then how can we look at certain platforms that we have where AI can weave through that and help tell a story? And that really comes from the best example I can give there would be on social media.
Hmm. And what are some of the things that you look at now and you get excited about in terms of social? I mean, it's a huge part when you're talking about the size of your audience on a global basis too, as well. I mean, that's the part
Yeah.
that's fascinating too. It's because you have to be authentic as it relates to one of the 50 languages or 60 languages we're talking about too.
Well, and I think the one thing, that's happening in the industry is that everyone went, let's say 2016, 2017 to scale. And everyone was SEO optimizing for scale. It was about the quantity, not necessarily is push as much out as you can, serve an ad, monetize on that ad. And now we're really going back to kind of it's about the brand, it's about the quality. And so that's exciting to me in terms of someone who has been always mindful of church and state, grew up in that era. And I think getting back to quality journalism for every publisher out there is paramount. And so with that piece of it, there will be opportunity kind of with AI in other areas, whether that's events or whether that's testing and learning in new products, new platforms, expanding social reach. But, we're in the middle of some of those conversations right now, and it's happening fast. I feel like sometimes, and this is where I think having 29 years at a company is helpful, where information is coming through every night. Every morning I wake up, there's about 10 newsletters that I feel compelled to read on AI.
Yeah.
It's almost I'm punished for sleeping, Brian. So I feel this, angst inside of me. And then it's how do we measure that? Okay, like this is a business for long-term sustainable success. So how do we pair what we've always been known for and always been good at with our trusted authoritative journalism? And then, look for new ways with technology and transformation to accelerate certain businesses. So time will tell, but I think a lot of people right now are trying to make a headline, Brian, versus really knowing what the end result is going to look like.
Yeah. And it's to always be innovative, always trying new things, but also to remembering what you do so well in the 107 years of the company's history with 140 million people a month you guys reach. We have to adapt, change, grow, but we have to protect the brand too.
Yeah, and there's to be accountability there, right? And I think I certainly feel that because of my history with the brand, but I do think that you will see people coming out of the gate really fast, testing things. And listen, we'll test some things too. It's one of those things that's like short and long game all at the same time, Brian.
Right.
And I have this analogy a lot where we're all at the same starting place. We're all at the same track line here. There's going to be sprinters. There's going to be hurdlers. I was definitely not a hurdler. There's going to be long distance runners. I was a long distance runner because I'm not naturally fast. And so you will see people that peter out in this race, but I do think it's the time for the relay race and that the baton is going to need to be passed. Even in journalism, as you look at the product that we produce, and I mean product, whether it's print or digital or social, where, there's the editorial, then there's the creative, then there's the distribution of that, whatever channel that's going out on. And so there's a lot of nuance to what that relay race looks like and how people are going to be successful moving forward.
So if you were talking to a leader in a totally different business, you hit on a lot of good points for that person to kind of, as they're driving their car, listening to this, to be thinking about. Any other advice for somebody who's in a business that needs to adapt, needs to change? One of the things I've always tried to do in my own life is just, let me walk down a different street. Let me read something that I don't. That's why, to be honest with you, in addition to always being online and consuming things like that, I love on the weekends particularly to pick up publications like Forbes and others and just expose myself to things that I would never have read online. The algorithm would not serve that up to me.
Right. In any industry right now, in any leadership role, you have to be adaptive. You have to be open to the change. Like a lot of times we just cling to it because it's so familiar. And it's that ungripping that will unlock so much more than you would ever gain from, retaining onto old ways. I do think that having partners and allies, whether they're inside your company, probably more importantly outside, and those partnerships will pay dividends. And it may not be this month, it may not be 6 months, it could be 6 years, it could be 10 years. And so I think just be really mindful of where an opportunity can exist in picking up the phone and calling someone and saying, hey, I need your opinion on this, or do you have 5 minutes? I could really use your help. And then just going to things, going to industry events and learning new things and learning about different businesses. To your point, it is freeing to get yourself out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you spend too much time up there, it can be a little dangerous. It certainly is for me. I know.
Yeah, you've got to metaphorically walk around the block a little bit here too. Yeah. And it is fun to expose yourself to new businesses and industries, not because it's going to be a sale out of that, but it's just you learn.
And I think too, no matter what your title is or what stage you're at in your career, you don't have to have the answer. You could just say, you know what? I honestly don't know that. And maybe I should know that, or I didn't even know I should have known that. And I'll get back to you on that. It's actually kind of refreshing when someone says, I actually don't know the answer to that. Let me get back to you. At least I appreciate that. And because half the time I don't know all the answers, and no one should.
Yeah, that's such a key thing too, to give people the confidence, and you don't have to have all the answers, and feel confident. And if somebody reacts poorly to that, then, maybe you don't want to hang around with that person, you know what I mean? Because you want to have an environment where, let me learn, let me try, let me find out about that.
And that's where that internal relay race comes in. It's like, find those people that can help you find that answer. And if someone's closed off to that, then you kind of already know that inside partnership or ally is probably not aligned. But I think it's also being clear to people, Brian. I think, clear is kind. And a lot of us in this day and age, we're so soft of hurting people's feelings. And that's not really the point of leadership. The point of people being in business, I hope, is to grow and learn new things. And if you don't give clear feedback, then you're not helping. There's no value in that exchange. And you can give really clear, kind feedback. You don't have to be dismissive. And I think that's really important. And I think it's probably one of the biggest things we don't do in business, Brian.
Yeah, that's a great point, where you just kind of give the feedback. And this is not to be mean or this or that, but I'm not doing you a service if I don't tell you what I'm seeing from this side of the table and how are the things maybe we should be doing them a little differently, or you might want to think about this a little differently.
Yeah. And sometimes it's taking accountability, like, hey, I may not have given you the best direction here, or I was probably off on that. Let's think about a different way. Or because as leaders, we don't handle every situation perfectly. We know that. But a lot of times people who report into us don't want to give us that feedback. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that, one, yes, you can give me that feedback. And two, it helps me give that feedback more clearly moving forward.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've found so much of that in my own life that has been such a great part and exciting about it is to realize that no matter who he or she is up on the stage, when they walk off the stage in their, how did I do? How was it? Did my daughter call me? Everybody's people too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter who they are. And to look at that as a moment of connection, and that's really good too. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really grateful that we were able to have this conversation. You've shared such valuable insights about your own career and about Forbes and what they do on a global basis. And it really goes back to your own life and what you've done and what you've accomplished and those around you. It's about Withology. It's about how we all work together to achieve great things. When you think about all of the competitors over the decades, over 107 years that Forbes has had, and now where the brand is and all the pieces of it are today in such a moment of strength, it's awesome. So congratulations and thank you for what you're doing at Forbes.
Oh, Brian, thank you. And thank you to you and your team and Withology. This is so important to have conversations like this and share it with people who may not be in our positions to actually have the time and the luxury to do this. So thank you.